Imagine for a second that a massive pharmaceutical company just holds this huge press conference, right?
Okay, setting the scene. I like it.
Yeah. So the CEO steps up to the podium and just like announces a brand new daily pill. And the clinical data backing it up is just, it's honestly staggering.
Oh, I'm sure it would be. What are the numbers?
Well, they've tested this intervention on 120,000 adults over an 8-year period, and the primary result is an 80% reduction in all-cause mortality.
Wow, an 80% drop. I mean, it's almost unheard of in clinical trials.
Right. But it actually gets better because this pill completely negates traditional clinical risks. Like, we're talking about a lifetime of smoking, underlying coronary artery disease, even diabetes. It's just statistically erased by this one intervention.
That's wild. I mean, if that were a real pill, it would fundamentally alter the global economy.
Oh, totally. People would be trampling each other at the pharmacy. And the craziest part of the data, there's no toxic dose. Like, there's literally no ceiling. The more of this you take, the lower your risk of dying.
Governments would be subsidizing it immediately. It would be universally recognized as, like, the biggest medical breakthrough in human history.
Exactly. Except, well, obviously it isn't a pill.
Right, of course not.
It's actually the result of a massive study published in the JMN Network Open. And that miraculous intervention is simply cardiorespiratory fitness.
Ah, right. The fitness data.
Yeah. Being an elite performer, quote unquote, in aerobic fitness literally alters the mathematics of your mortality. So today, for this deep dive, we are going to figure out exactly how you, the listener, can build this life-saving engine for yourself.
It's such a crucial topic, really.
It really is. We're going to decode the optimal training formula. We've pulled together data from medical clinics, coaching platforms, fitness science blogs, and even a highly analytical Reddit thread.
You've got to love the Reddit fitness communities. They really get into the weeds.
Oh, they go so deep. But specifically, we are diving into the holy grail of endurance, which is zone 2 training. We'll explore, why it works, the psychological traps that completely ruin it for people, and how to balance it so you don't accidentally, vaporize your hard-earned strength gains.
Yeah, which is a huge fear for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But in a world of absolute fitness overload, I mean, where every social media feed is just packed with different, totally contradictory protocols, understanding the underlying mechanics of your body's energy systems, it's the ultimate shortcut.
It really cuts through the noise, doesn't it?
Exactly. When you understand what is actually happening at the cellular level, you stop guessing.
Yeah.
You stop adopting random routines and you start building genuine health span.
So let's start right at the foundation then. What actually is zone 2? Because, the term gets thrown around constantly in fitness circles, but the clinical definition is actually pretty rigid, right?
It is, yeah. According to the data from Vail Health and Training Peaks, Zone 2 is a very specific, moderate intensity aerobic exercise. It usually hovers around 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate.
Okay, 60 to 70%.
Right. And crucially, it requires your blood lactate to remain very low, specifically under 2 millimoles per liter.
Under 2 millimoles. Got it. But why does that specific physiological state even matter?
Well, to grasp that, we have to look inside the muscle tissue itself. At this highly controlled, steady pace, your body is primarily recruiting type I muscle fibers.
Those are the slow twitch ones, right?
Exactly, the slow twitch fibers.
Yeah.
Because the intensity is low enough, the mitochondria inside those fibers have adequate time to use oxygen to convert fat into ATP.
Ah, so you're actually burning fat for energy.
Yes, you are relying almost exclusively on fat oxidation for fuel, rather than burning through your precious glycogen, which is basically your stored carbohydrates.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I've been thinking about this kind of like a car. Like, if your body is a hybrid vehicle, spending time in zone 2 is basically building a massive, highly efficient battery system, right?
That's a great way to look at it, yeah.
Because you're training the body to cruise on this endless supply of fat, which is battery power, so you don't have to constantly tap into your expensive, limited premium gas, which would be the glycogen.
That analogy holds up perfectly when you look at the adaptations taking place. As you build that battery, you get 2 distinct categories of upgrades. First, you get central adaptations.
Central meaning the heart.
Right. Your heart literally remodels itself. The left ventricle becomes stronger and more elastic, which increases your stroke volume.
So it's pushing more blood with every single pump.
Exactly. It pushes significantly more blood through your body with every beat, meaning it doesn't have to beat as often. And second, you get peripheral adaptations within the muscles themselves.
Like what? What's happening in the muscle?
You see massive increases in mitochondrial density, and you expand the capillary networks that actually deliver the oxygen to those tissues.
Okay, but I have to push back a little here because when I actually went out and tried to run in zone 2, I felt ridiculous. I mean, I'm shuffling along, grandmas are literally power walking past me.
Oh, I know the feeling. It's incredibly humbling.
Yeah, I had to start walking the second I hit a tiny incline just to keep my heart rate down. It feels so counterintuitive. If I want to be a faster, fitter athlete in the long run, how does moving at a glacial pace actually accomplish that?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it really comes down to metabolic efficiency and fuel preservation. By improving your ability to utilize fat at higher and higher speeds, you preserve that premium gas, the glycogen, for when you genuinely need it.
Like at the end of a race.
Right. Think about the final kick of a 5K or, when you need to lift something incredibly heavy. If your body hasn't panicked and burned all your carbs during the easy miles, you still have explosive energy left in the tank.
Oh, wow. That makes so much sense.
Plus, there's a massive systemic health benefit taking place beneath the surface. This specific low-intensity process stimulates GLUT4 transporters in your cells.
Wait, GLUT4? I don't think I've ever heard of that. What is that doing?
It's basically a protein that acts like a doorway for glucose. Exercise physically stimulates these transporters to move to the cell membrane and pull glucose out of your bloodstream.
Okay.
And here's the kicker. It does this independently of insulin.
Wait, really? So you are clearing sugar from your blood without needing an insulin spike at all?
Right. You are drastically improving your insulin sensitivity and blood sugar control, which offers profound protection against metabolic diseases, all just by going for a steady, seemingly too easy jog.
That is incredible. And honestly, it brings us to the psychological hurdle, which I think is kind of the most fascinating part of this whole protocol.
Oh, the ego trap.
Yes, because zone 2 sounds incredibly easy on paper, like almost too easy. So if it really just involves holding a comfortable, moderate pace, why do the coaching metrics show that so many people fail to spend any meaningful time in it?
Well, human ego and flawed math are the two biggest culprits here. Let's tackle the math first, based on the data from Superpower and Training Peaks. A huge percentage of people try to find their zone 2 target using the classic formula.
The 220 minus your age one.
Exactly. 220 minus your age to estimate maximum heart rate and then calculating 60 to 70% of that number. But the clinical data is very clear that this formula is a terrible way to train.
Really? Why is it so bad? People have been using that forever.
It carries a massive standard error of about 12 to 14 beats per minute.
Wow. That margin of error makes the formula basically useless. I mean, if my target is supposed to be 130 beats per minute based on that math, but the formula is naturally off by 14 beats, I could be training completely outside the physiological zone I'm aiming for.
Precisely. You could be missing your true physiological markers entirely. You're either barely moving or you're crossing the lactate threshold without realizing it.
So what's the better way to measure it?
A vastly superior method, if you want to use heart rate, is a 30-minute lactate threshold heart rate time trial, or LTHR.
Okay, how does that work?
You run as hard and steady as you can sustain for 30 minutes. Then you take your average heart rate for the final 20 minutes of that effort and calculate 85 to 89% of that number. That gives you a highly accurate, personalized zone 2 target.
Okay, but let's be honest here. Going to a track and suffering through a grueling 30-minute max effort time trial just to find an easy jogging pace, that's a massive barrier to entry for most
Right,
people.
yeah, a lot of people just won't do it.
Luckily, there's a brilliantly simple alternative that doesn't require a chest strap or a calculator, right? The talk test.
Yes, the talk test is fantastic.
You should just be able to speak in full, comfortable sentences, not gasping out a few words at a time. Like, you should be able to have a continuous phone conversation with a friend without them asking if you're okay.
And what's fascinating here is that this brings us right back to the ego component and why people fail the talk test. Most novice runners and even experienced lifters trying to add cardio naturally drift into what exercise scientists call the gray zone or zone 3.
Ah, the gray zone.
It happens almost subconsciously. It feels like a quote-unquote good workout because you are breathing heavily, you are sweating, and you feel a real sense of exertion.
Right. It feels productive. You feel like you're actually doing something, not just shuffling.
Scientifically, though, the gray zone is a massive waste of time. You are pushing too hard to get the pure mitochondrial fat-burning adaptations of zone 2, but you aren't pushing anywhere near hard enough to get the high-end cardiovascular benefits of a sprint.
So you're just stuck in the middle.
Exactly. You completely dilute the low-intensity cellular signaling.
I've heard someone describe the gray zone like driving your car on the highway in second gear. It's loud, the RPMs are screaming, it burns a ton of gas. You feel like you're doing a lot of work, but you're not actually going very fast.
That's a perfect analogy. You're just putting unnecessary wear and tear on the engine.
And that wear and tear is the real danger, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
By spending all your time in Zone 3, you are piling unnecessary mechanical stress onto your joints, tendons, and ligaments, which drastically increases your risk of injury without actually building a better aerobic base.
So you're paying a really high price for a very low physiological return.
Exactly.
Okay, so we definitely need the discipline to swallow our pride, slow down, and build that base. But that inevitably leads to the debate over the Zone 2 and VO2 max pyramid, which was a huge discussion in the Arpita Reddit community.
Oh, yeah. The base versus the ceiling debate.
Right. Because if Zone 2 is building this incredible life-saving foundation and clearing our blood sugar, why do we need to endure the absolute agony of VO2 max or high-intensity interval training at all? Like, can't we just jog at a conversational pace forever and live to be 100?
I wish.
Yeah.
But it really comes down to the architecture of your fitness capacity. Zone 2 builds the width of your base. And the wider the base, the higher the pyramid can eventually go. But VO2 max is the actual ceiling of that pyramid. It represents the maximum amount of oxygen your body can utilize during intense exertion. And unfortunately, VO2 max predictably and inevitably declines with age.
It always goes down.
Always. If you don't target it directly and force it upward, that ceiling is going to crash down on you as you get older, severely limiting your functional independence.
Which brings up a major public misconception I've noticed, specifically regarding Dr. Steven Seiler's famous 80-20 rule for endurance training.
Oh, the 80-20 rule is so misunderstood.
People assume 80-20 means 80% of your total minutes should be Zone 2 and 20% of your total minutes should be high-intensity VO2 max work.
Which would break literally anyone, even an Olympic athlete.
It's mathematically insane. I mean, if you were doing 5 hours of cardio a week, that would mean an entire hour of absolutely agonizing maximum effort intervals. People try this, they burn out in 2 weeks, and they just quit.
Because the crucial distinction is that the 80-20 split dictates the number of sessions, not the total volume of minutes.
Okay, so sessions, not minutes.
Right. If you structure your week with, say, 10 cardio workouts, 8 of those sessions are purely Zone 2. Only 2 of those sessions involve high intensity. High-intensity VO2 max work is incredibly taxing on the central nervous system.
Yeah.
You just cannot sustain a high volume of it.
So for those 2 high-intensity sessions, what is the most efficient way to get that stimulus? Because let's face it, nobody wants to spend any more time in the pain cave than necessary.
Well, the clinical gold standard for that top 20% of your training is the Norwegian 4x4 method.
The Norwegian 4x4, how does that work?
It involves 4 minutes of intense work, getting up to around 90% of your maximum heart rate, followed by 3 minutes of active recovery. And you repeat that entire cycle 4 times.
4 minutes hard, 3 minutes easy, 4 times. That sounds awful.
It is intensely uncomfortable, yes, but it provides the precise physiological stress needed to push your VO2 max ceiling higher.
Okay, so we have the engine built with Zone 2, and we have the ceiling raised with the Norwegian 4x4. But here is where we hit a massive roadblock for a lot of you listening. You don't just want to be an endurance machine, you want to be strong.
Right. Muscle mass is also critical for longevity.
Exactly. And there is a biological turf war that happens when you try to do both at the same time, known as the interference effect.
Yes. This phenomenon traces back to Robert Hickson's foundational study in 1980, and it's heavily discussed in the combat fitness and Altus performance sources we looked at. Hickson demonstrated that training for endurance and strength simultaneously produces less of each than training for either alone.
Because your body is receiving conflicting signals.
Essentially, yes.
I found the mechanics of this so fascinating because, to me, it feels like trying to run 2 massive programs on a computer at the exact same time. Like, let's say you're trying to install a massive software update. That's your strength training.
Okay, I see where you're going with this.
But at the exact same time, you are running a heavy system-wide virus scan, which is the endurance training. The computer just crashes. They can't run efficiently at the same time. But why does the body actually do this?
It's basically an evolutionary energy management system, and it's driven by cellular signaling pathways. Endurance training heavily activates an enzyme called AMPK.
AMPK.
Right. AMPK promotes energy balance, fat oxidation, and mitochondrial growth. It senses that you are depleting energy, so it switches the body into a highly efficient conservation mode. But strength training activates a totally different pathway called MTOR.
And MTR is for muscle growth.
Exactly. MTOR is the primary pathway for muscle protein synthesis and hypertrophy.
And I'm assuming those two pathways don't play nicely together.
Not at all. When AMPK is highly active, it actively inhibits MTOR. The body essentially says, look, we are running low on energy from all this cardio, so this is definitely not the time to build metabolically expensive new muscle tissue.
Wow, so it just shuts the muscle building signal down.
It prioritizes endurance adaptations and blocks the muscle growth, yes.
But beyond just the cellular pathways, there is also the physical reality of mechanical fatigue, right? Especially with something like running.
Oh, absolutely. Running introduces eccentric mechanical loading. You are catching your body weight against gravity thousands of times per hour. That creates microscopic damage to your muscle fibers with every single foot strike.
Which explains why my legs feel like lead a day after a long run.
Exactly. That structural fatigue severely degrades your ability to produce maximum force in a squat or a deadlift the next day. You simply lack the neuromuscular freshness to trigger strength adaptations.
So for the listener who wants to be strong and incredibly fit, who refuses to choose just one, what is the exact playbook to stop these two systems from cannibalizing each other?
The tactical playbook really relies on four main fixes. Number one, realize that interference is dose-dependent. Low volumes of cardio won't kill your gains.
What's the threshold there?
The interference effect really only begins to aggressively hit hard when you cross about 5 hours of aerobic work a week. So if you are doing, say, 3 45-minute zone 2 sessions a week, the interference is negligible.
Oh, that's a huge relief. So if you're keeping it under that 5-hour mark, you don't need to panic. What is rule 2?
Sequencing. If your schedule forces you to do both on the exact same day, always sequence your strength training before your cardio.
Lift first, then run.
Right. You want your central nervous system completely fresh to hit the heavy weights and activate the MTOR pathway hard before you flood the system with AMPK.
Got it. Which leads perfectly into rule 3, which is about creating a buffer zone between the two, right?
Yes. Ideally, you want to separate your strength and endurance sessions by at least 6 hours. AMPK activation peaks shortly after your run or ride, but it decays over several hours.
So if you wait 6 hours...
You allow that AMPK spike to fade away, which clears the path for you to trigger MTOR later in the day without any cellular interference.
That makes perfect sense. And rule 4 is about choosing the right tool for the job, I assume.
Exactly. Swap the running for low-impact modalities, cycling, rowing, swimming, or even using a stair climber. By removing that eccentric loading from running, you save your legs from the structural microdamage, keeping them fresh for heavy lifting.
Okay, so let's say I follow the playbook perfectly. I'm putting in my zone 2 hours. I'm suffering through my Norwegian 4x4. I'm separating my lifting by 6 hours. But, feeling fitter is a very subjective metric. If you are putting in all these hours a week, how do you mathematically prove to yourself that your body is actually changing?
According to the superpower source, the most immediate metric you can track is your resting heart rate. If you track it every morning, you should see a tangible drop of 5 to 10 beats per minute over an 8 to 12-week block of consistent Zone 2 training.
5 to 10 beats, that's significant.
It is. That proves the central adaptation of your heart stroke volume is happening. But blood markers are the ultimate truth tellers.
Okay, so if someone listening goes to their doctor for an annual physical, what specific markers should they ask for to validate all this hard work?
There are 4 key markers to watch. First, ApoB, which is a highly accurate marker for cardiovascular risk.
Okay, ApoB.
Second, HbA1c, which shows your 3-month average for blood glucose. Third, your fasting insulin, which acts as an early warning indicator for insulin resistance. And fourth, HSCRP, which tracks systemic inflammation. Consistent Zone 2 training should drive all of those markers down.
Awesome. But we can't talk about blood markers and metabolic flexibility without talking about fuel. Diet has to play a massive role here, right? Based on Dr. Sharma's clinic notes, how do different eating habits interact with this engine we're building?
Diet is absolutely the other half of the equation. The standard American diet, which is heavily processed and constantly floods the system with refined sugars, completely wrecks your metabolic flexibility.
Because you're constantly spiking your blood sugar.
Right. It leads to baseline insulin resistance, meaning your body essentially forgets how to efficiently tap into its fat stores.
It basically rusts the hybrid engine right as we're trying to build it. But what happens if you swing to the absolute extremes, like a strict ketogenic diet?
Well, a ketogenic diet forces the body to adapt to burning fat because you remove carbohydrates entirely.
Which sounds great for zone 2.
It does, but the transition phase is brutal.
Yeah.
And more importantly, a lot of athletes see a tangible decline in high-end performance because they have zero readily available glycogen for those Norwegian 4x4 sessions. You really need carbs to hit those maximum heart rate peaks.
And on the flip side, a very high-carb diet gives you tons of fuel for sprints, but it limits the fat oxidation benefits of your zone 2 work because your body just defaults to burning the easily available blood sugar.
Exactly, which is why a low-carb approach is often cited in the clinical notes as the optimal middle ground. It restricts carbohydrates just enough to force efficient fat oxidation during your zone 2 base miles, but leaves enough glycogen in the system to power through those high-intensity VO2 max days.
It's all about providing the right internal environment. So, to summarize the action plan for you listening, build the engine with slow, conversational zone 2 to target those type I fibers and burn fat. Raise the ceiling using the agonizing but effective Norwegian 4x4 protocol. Protect your hard-earned muscle by waiting at least 6 hours between your cardio and your lifting, and favor low-impact machines. And finally, track your blood work to mathematically prove it's working.
It is a phenomenal evidence-based playbook. It really will radically alter your health span. But this raises an important question. Consider a scenario that completely breaks this model.
Oh, I'm listening. What breaks it?
We just outlined a plan that requires hours of running, cycling, rowing, and heavy lifting. But what if you are elderly? What if you're recovering from a severe injury or dealing with severe arthritis and you simply cannot endure the mechanical load of all this exercise?
That is a brutal reality for a lot of people. If your joints can't physically sustain the impact, how do you get the cellular adaptation?
This is exactly where the bleeding edge of longevity science is operating right now, at places like Dr. Sharma's clinic. Clinicians are increasingly using two emerging techniques: blood flow restriction, or BFR training, and electrical muscle stimulation, or EMS.
Right, blood flow restriction. I've only ever heard of that being used in, like, physical therapy. How does that work?
They use specialized pneumatic bands to partially restrict venous blood flow out of the limbs during incredibly light exercise.
An exercise? Like, how light?
Like curling a 2-pound dumbbell or just doing a bodyweight squat. By restricting the blood flow, you trap lactic acid and metabolic waste in the muscle tissue. This localized stress tricks your brain and your cellular pathways into thinking you're performing massive, high-intensity heavy lifting.
That is wild. So it triggers the systemic hormonal response and the muscle growth, but with virtually zero mechanical wear and tear on fragile joints.
Exactly the point. And EMS takes a similar bypass route. It uses precise electrical impulses to force deep muscle contractions without requiring any central nervous system output or heavy joint loading. So the provocative question we have to ask ourselves is, as this technology becomes more refined, could the future of achieving quote-unquote elite longevity in fitness involve hacking our biology while barely moving at all?
It really makes you wonder what a standard prescription for exercise is going to look like in 20 years. Like, we might just be sitting in chairs getting super fit, but until we can literally hack the system from our couches, we do have to put in the work. So think back to that medical chart we talked about at the very beginning, the 80% reduction in mortality, the statistical erasure of chronic disease risk. The pill exists, but you have to manufacture it yourself, out there on the road, staying disciplined at a conversational pace. Take these insights into your next workout, keep building that engine, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.